Hey everybody. So I want to talk about Jamie Benn for a minute here because Jamie Benn is one of my favorite players in the NHL, and he is really one of the last old school superstars left, maybe the last. I can't think of anyone else like him still left in the NHL. This is a guy who is a superstar first line player, can score a ton of goals, can score a ton of points, a legitimate NHL superstar, not just a good player. There are plenty of good players around the league who can score 20, maybe even 30-ish goals and also play physically and fight and stuff, but Ben is above that. Ben is a superstar. And he's still such a physical player. He throws huge body checks. He drops the gloves. He is an old school player through and through, and he's really the last one left, and it makes me really sad to see that there aren't other players like that left, but boy do I love watching Jamie Benn. And last night he had a great scrap with Josh Anderson of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and it's Benn's second fight of the season. He fought Miles Wood earlier in the season. Both of his fights have been absolutely fantastic, great fights. A lot of these good players that fight, they they'll get in scraps here or there. Some of these, we've seen Kucherov drop the gloves a few times in his career. David Pastrnak got in a fight for Boston last year. Marchand's gotten a couple fights for the Bruins this year. But usually when star players fight, it's like, you just drop the gloves, grab on, throw a punch or two, and fall over. And nobody wants to get hurt. And you don't want the fight to go on for too long and risk breaking a hand or anything or getting your head hit the ice. When Jamie Benn fights, he fights. He fights like an enforcer. When he drops the gloves, and obviously being a star player, he's not a guy who drops the gloves 10 or 20 times a year or anything, like a real tough guy fourth liner would. But when he drops the gloves, he fights to fight. He fights for real. This guy throws haymakers and legitimately fights. He's not fighting just for show to be like, hey, look, I dropped my glove, so here's a punch or two, and now we're going to fall down, and it's going to be over, and everything's going to be fine. No, when he fights, he's punching you in the face, and he is throwing haymakers. And both his fights this year have been absolutely incredible. His fight against Miles Wood, if you follow the offthewallhockey.com website, I do Fight of the Week every week. His first fight this season with Miles Wood was the Fight of the Week. This last fight is probably going to be Fight of the Week for this week. We'll see how the rest of the week goes. But you're going to need a real good one to beat that. So both his fights this year could end up being the best fights of that particular week in the NHL. The guy is awesome, and there just aren't players like him anymore. He has so much Mark Messier in him. He's a great leader. He's a great scorer. He's willing to be physical and tough and play with an edge the way that Mark Messier did. And Messier didn't fight as much as his career went along. But when you think back to Messier in Edmonton, he dropped the gloves. He was not afraid to drop the gloves. I mean, he certainly wasn't doing it as much as Edmonton's enforcers were. Guys like Kevin McClelland and Semenko and McSorley were fighting all the time. Messier wasn't fighting that often, but he was willing to drop the gloves, and he got in plenty of scraps. His fighting waned a little bit as his career went on, but he was still a great leader and such an important player. And I see a lot of Mark Messier and Jamie Benn. Really, with Jerome McGinley was like that as well. And you could probably say Shane Doan. Shane Doan wasn't the offensive superstar, but he was still a star player who was very willing to play tough. So Shane Doan and Jerome McGinley, I think, are your two biggest examples of recently retired players. Messier is a great example of an old school player who was like that. If you go back into the 70s and 60s, there were a lot of players like that. Jamie Benn's a very 70s style player. You think back to the 70s, Bobby Orr Bobby Orr would fight 6, 7, 8 times a year. You're talking the best defenseman in the league. Talking about I think the greatest defenseman to ever play the game, and he's fighting 5, 6, 7 times a season in the late 60s and early 70s. That's toughness from a superstar that you don't see anymore. You saw a lot in the 60s, a lot in the 70s. Then true enforcers came into play, and it became fighters. The fighters do the fighting, and the star players don't have to. But there were still star players that were more than willing to stand up for themselves. Marc Messier being a golden example of that. And then in recent times, you've had guys like Jerome McGinley and Shane Doan, who are star players and leaders of their teams, also more than willing to fight and play physically. Jamie Benn is really the last one left. He's not the last good player that still fights left. I mean, you still have Milan Lucic in the league. You still have Wayne Simmons in the league. There are other, power forward type guys who can score goals and also fight, but they're not on the same level as Jamie Benn. Jamie Benn is a superstar. Those guys are good players. They're even great players, but they're not superstars. Jamie Benn is a superstar and still willing to scrap and willing to play physically. He is what really, I think, the last old school guy left like that. And it's just awesome to watch. He is one of my favorite players left in the league. So I needed to talk about Benn and what he does and what he stands for, and what a great player he is, and what a great I just have so much respect for guys like that who are star players. It would be so easy for him to just say, I'm a first line winger, I'm not going to fight, why am I going to drop the gloves? What does that do for me? But he loves to just get down and chuck them, and he chucks them, boy. And it's just so awesome to see. So I am a huge fan of Jamie Benn. This is a a great old school style player, and the NHL would be so much better off if it had more players like Jamie Benn. If they could bring back some physicality, bring back more fighting, and really make the game entertaining and just flat out awesome again, it would be great. Because everybody, Twitter exploded last night when that fight happened, and everyone was talking about how great it was to see Benn throwing down like that. It was just awesome. So I hope there comes a day in the NHL where we get back to that old school style of play. And shout out to Jamie Benn for keeping that alive, because he's absolutely awesome. So that's what I've got on that. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support Off the Wall Hockey, the link to our Patreon is also down in the description. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.